Hey y'all, it is Straight from the Coffin with Amari.
And Jude.
Two guys from the coffin.
Yeah.
Wait, two guys in a coffin.
I didn't even register that you said it.
I don't even know our own name. We're professional.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're back with episode 2.
Episode 2.
And what are we talking about this time?
Well, I'm leaning away from the mic.
Oh, me too.
Well, as we had kind of mentioned in our first episode, the second episode is going to be about race, gender, and sexuality, specifically centering or revolving around Louis, the titular vampire.
Exactly. My wife.
Your wife, the people's princess.
We're married.
Our favorite. Huh?
What?
Okay.
But yeah, we're going to get into that.
Mm-hmm.
We will have, as we mentioned in our previous episode, we will have other conversations around race, gender, and sexuality as it pertains to both Claudia and then Armand as well. But we are starting off with Louis.
Yes. And I think for me, the jumping off point with Louis is always his whole deal is roles.
Mm-hmm.
In episode 1, we have the whole proposal or whatever, the mention of roles, and it is so crucial that that's brought up. That when Lestat brings that up, that it's speaking very much to Louis and how Louis does feel like he has all these roles that are
placed upon him,
that he feels he has placed upon himself in order to navigate the specific environment that he's in. And we see him with this very clear hypermasculine affectation right from the jump. And it's so phony, especially in retrospect. If you go back watch episode 1, you're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Who is that guy?
Who is this guy? So yeah, there are these roles, and then part of the stop proposal is the whole all these roles you conform to, and none of them your true nature, and this enticing him to be himself, but
which
it's not. Well, it's who Lestat thinks Louis should be, or who he thinks Louis is.
Yes, which is not accurate either. Which is why we see shaping between them later as we get into the season.
But yeah, with these roles, the most obvious way to entry point into this is gender roles.
Yeah.
And
let's just get straight into it.
Yeah, it's these gender roles, and the ones that are impressed upon him by society versus the ones that are then impressed upon him in his relationship. Specifically with, I would say, Lestat, it's very overt.
It's very clear cut.
Yeah.
What the hierarchy looks like.
What he's expecting from Louis.
Yes. And then when you get into Armand, it's a little...
It's purposefully obfuscated.
Yes.
I think Armand is too mercurial of a person for it to be very clear what he wants on any given day. He's constantly changing. He's bisexual, he's a switch, he's never made a decision in his life.
That's kind of real though.
Yeah, he doesn't have a very clear-cut identity, whereas Lestat knows who he is. Lestat has a lot of issues. Identity is not one of them, which is not the case with Louis.
Yeah.
I think most of Louis' strife comes from identity, but mostly
figure out who he is.
Figure out who he is.
Where he kind of works within,
yeah, and then chafing against what everyone else has decided he is.
Exactly.
Because he has to pick the man of the house. We see him. There's a lot of masculine roles. We see him in right at the jump. He is his father has passed. He is the head of the household. He has to make all the decisions. He has to control all this, that, and the other. And also, he's in this the line of work he's in it's really interesting because he is in like this position of like he runs a business, he's the head of the household, but when he's with those other people, he's subservient. He has to, bow and like defer to them, and how much he fucking hates that.
Yeah.
He wants to be an equal. He wants to be seen for the intelligent, savvy businessman he is, but he always is like, what was the line? I'm trying to remember the line at the table when he's just like, there's capital and there's labor, that Tom Anderson says to him, and he's referred to as the labor. So he's not seen as a businessman, he's seen as like,
to be taken seriously, but white supremacy was kind of in the way there.
As it so often is.
But yeah, so like when we get into like these gender roles that
so if you hear the ice in my iced coffee, I need to take a sip, and then I realized it was loud.
We see these gender roles that Louis tends to exist within. And this is a conversation that I feel like happens a lot, even like within the fandom, a lot of discourse that we see around. And we kind of talked about it a little bit in the previous podcast. We touched briefly on it because we do see a lot of people who hyper masculinize Louis, which is not correct either.
Yeah.
Because he does end up being in all these feminine roles, especially in his relationships. We see like when he's in his relationship with Lestat, their relationship is very like this traditional Edwardian marriage, and it's also mirrors the Placage marriage. No, I said
Placage. You said it right.
Oh, yeah. I did. Look at me. The Placage marriages, that were kind of, there's a lot of that going around during that time. So we also see how we see this mirrored also in the Placage marriages, where usually wealthy white men, but according to the book that I read, I didn't finish it, but the first part of the book that I read, it's called Black New Orleans. And I want to like literally like actually talk about it because I feel like it really it's a great base to read if you want to kind of understand what blackness looked like at that time in New Orleans. But it talks about how like the Placage marriages were where white men could court black women just like openly, and it's because though at white men still had like the power in those relationships, and even though a lot of those specific marriages were consensual, the white man still had like all the power.
Yeah, it does. It has like the, well, because like there's only so many models for a relationship that I think that they have context for, and one of them would be that Edwardian marriage where you have like this very patriarchal structure. You have the father slash husband at the head, followed by the mother, and then at the very bottom the child, which will be added onto when the Claudia joins their relationship. But so it does mirror this relationship that would have been Louis would have grown up with and seen. And you can very easily tell that like Louis is chafing in it because like it does have this very patriarchal tone to it where Lestat is, his husband, but Lestat is also a teacher because now we have that, maker fledgling relationship, and there's also patriarchal in that sort of like original origin of the word with like almost like a father role teaching a younger, and Louis does not like it.
He hates that shit.
He hates it.
Really, like, resents it, really.
Yeah, because Louis is smart. Louis is very smart, and being treated like he's a naughty child whenever he does things, especially things that like Lestat would do. Like, when he attacks that guy who was talking down to him, you cannot tell me in a million years that Lestat, if he was in that situation, would not have done the exact same thing. Yeah. But he's being spoken to like he's
I mean, dumb. We see Lestat kill a man just because he didn't like the way he sang.
Yeah. He was just like, this guy's off key, dead. But this guy, you know, in Louis' case, I forget what that guy's job specifically is. He's like the esquire for, you know, Fenwick. And he's like doing all these really, really egregious microaggressions, like being like, wow, you can think. And it's just like, he's a very successful businessman. Mm-hmm. But also being condescended to by Lestat, who's just like, what were you thinking? Mm-hmm. Type energy. And Louis like, no, and just not into it, and like really upset about it. And like when he asks questions, he's met with like this very like, because I said so energy. And you have a lot of Lestat being like, why aren't you doing this the way that I want you to do it? And getting upset when Louis won't behave the way that he feels that he should be behaving.
Which is crazy because he literally was one who said that I'm trying to like break you from all these roles that you've been placed in, but he puts Louis in another role that Louis is like not about. We can talk about Louis, you know, being whatever, a wife or whatever, but he's not this super submissive little trad wife. This is something that is placed upon him. And he's not with it, which is why that the whole trad wife narrative with him starts to get a little weird.
I would also say the trad wife narrative really enabled people to be very misogynistic. Yeah. Because like a wife, the only thing a wife denotes is that you are married. Yeah. It does not say anything about your personality. It literally only denotes that you are married. It does not denote submission. It does not denote being meek or demure or like anything. And when people are like Louis and the wife in the relationship, which means he's super submissive, loves to do whatever his husband says, and just be, you know, this dainty little thing. And it's just like, you watch the show, you can see that is not. Yeah.
I think where the resistance comes from is that, because like so many people want to like try to get away from this like hyper masculine look of Louis, which is completely correct because that's not him at all. Yeah. And want to be very clear that he is placed in these wife roles. But like, why is he placed in these roles? When it comes to Louis and Lestat, it's due to like Lestat's power as like a white man. Mm-hmm. Louis ends up just being placed in the role of wife because he doesn't have the power in the relationship. Yeah. I mean, yes, there's also like, you know, Lestat's like a stronger vampire, blah, 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 blah.
But all of that to me is a metaphor for that power he wields as a wealthy white man.
Which is where I was trying to get to with the Posage marriages, because like that's why it mirrors that exact same thing, because if Louis, when people try to be like, well, when people try to get away from this, like, when they don't want to admit that Louis does play the wife role, because I also see that on the other hand, I'm like, well, that's not accurate, because Louis wouldn't be able to do it the other way. Yeah. Like a black man courting like a white woman, that'll work. That's not good. That would not fly. Like when that did happen, it was usually with like wealthy white women and their like servants. So like, yeah, that's really gross. Yeah, and like it's not the nature of Louis and Lestat's relationship. No. Instead, it's more reminiscent of the Posage marriages, where a white man could court a black woman, but again, they're able to do that because he's a white man, and so that's where we get into Louis in this like wife role, because that's just the hierarchy of the hierarchy of power that exists between them.
And I think, like, kind of moving, because I was thinking about, like, that is the hierarchy of their relationship, and also, like, the role that Lestat determines for Louis. That's like, oh, we're in a relationship, this is what it looks like. Kind of like deciding for Louis that Louis moving into his house and all of these things. And it, like, I don't know why it just, like, to me, like, loops into, like, Lestat kind of choosing for all these cats want to meow.
Don't you want to be a co-host? Come on. Oh my god.
So, like, Lestat kind of choosing what their relationship looks like. Lestat kind of, chastising Louis about how he behaves as a vampire. I also think, like, like, there's a lot of it kind of, like, to me, because, like, I know there is, like, that thing of people being, like, the lack of metaphor is striking about the whole story, but I do think there is a very potent metaphor of Lestat constantly telling Louis what he isn't supposed to do, and how he's not embracing his vampirism, the correct way, by choosing to stay in contact with his family, by still trying to be involved in his community, by still trying to be a businessman. It, to me, does mirror, like, the way that white queer people talk down to people of color.
Seen a lot of that recently. Yes. When, like, Black queer people, especially, like,
to queer Africans.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. I was like, it's been real wild, the conversations I've seen. I'm like, there's just a lack of understanding. And a resistance to even try to understand, like, where people are coming from and, like, the context.
There was this very clear, like, well, the way that you experience queerness isn't right because it runs counter to my experience, and I am disregarding how culture informs how we I was gonna say, like, how we express our identity and how we feel about our identities. And so Lestat being like, I'm gonna be out there doing whatever, and, like, I'm gonna be, I can do whatever I want, and everyone else can deal with it. And Louis like, I can't do that.
He literally can't do it. We see the one time when he, actually has, like, any kind of, like, emotion and does something based off emotion.
When he tries to do something the way Lestat would do it, it ends horribly.
Yes.
And it has repercussions on more than just Louis personally, because if they had, like, shown up and burned down the Rue Royale house and that was it, that would be different. But they went and they decided to, like, burn down a Black community.
Yeah.
And Louis like, well, guess I can't do that. Like, this is not...
Like, this is exactly what he's been trying to, like, explain.
And, like, Lestat just disregarded it and
disregarded that as well. And I'm like...
Yeah.
And some people try to act like Louis was mean during that point, but he should have been meaner. He wasn't mean. That was a proper reaction to someone being like...
Yeah, I think him leaving Lestat over that would have been valid.
100%.
Yeah.
He would have smacked, but, because what? Do you not see what's going on outside? You think this is a good time to make advances?
Yeah, to be like, this should be our anniversary. Can you shut up?
Don't fucking piss me off.
Yeah.
And I think that just goes a lot of fans react the same way to Louis. I mean, even with that scenario, there's no, like, understanding. There's people who try to blame Louis for that situation. Like, well, he should have what? He should have done, no. Like, shut the fuck up. But, like, people don't seem to have a understanding of Black queerness. And so they can't really understand Louis.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do the work to do so. Instead, they want to project white queerness onto him and ideas of white queerness. And it's just, I'm like, then you're not engaging with him properly. Then.
Yeah, and it also, it to me,
you're gonna hear them.
Yeah, it, like, to me, all the conversations where Lestat is like, you should just stop seeing your family.
Yes,
remind me so much of, like, when people like queer people of color have like a really fraught relationship with their family, but they just, they still spend a lot of time with them. And white queer people like, you should just cut them off because they don't accept you. It's just like, but when you are a marginalized person like this, like, especially like a diasporic person, and you have your community in this area, to just cut them all off, cut off every support system you've ever had, to then, in Louis's case, cling to one person, because the only other person would be Lestat.
Yeah.
Is just not like, it's not easy.
I want to say I'm one of the like, there's not a lot of people who do that, but I'm the one person who like has done that, and this didn't work. So like, that's probably why I relate to Louis too. But like, yeah. it's extremely hard because like, especially since we're talking about Louis, for like Black folks to lose your entire community is like, that's everything. Like, if you need help, whatever, like, that's everything. Community is literally everything, especially during this time, that time period.
In that location.
That would be so crucial. So crucial. And I don't feel like people understand that or want to understand what it would be like losing that kind of community.
Because like, I also feel like it works where it's like, the more time he tries to post vampiric transformation, the more time he tries to spend with his family, the more harm and the more estranged he ends up becoming with his family, just because like there are these irreconcilable differences. In his case, it is the fact that he is a vampire, and so that makes it hard for him to continue to be involved with his family. But I also think that is a perfect metaphor for, he's trying to embrace this like queer lifestyle, but the more he tries to continue to hold on to his family, but also his queerness, it starts to fall apart. And the like, one of the, I think to me, like, really potent moments is when he learns how to use the mind gift, and he uses it on his mother, and he really wishes he hadn't. You can tell immediately that he's like, I wish I didn't know that. I wish I could unhear her thoughts about me. And that, it's like, it's different for Lestat, who had a bad relationship with his family anyway, except for his mom, but like, she was really into becoming a vampire, so then that ended up not mattering. But like, let's stop being like, you should just cut him off, because like, family like that doesn't matter that much to Lestat, because he's just like, what? But also he has the freedom to be able to just go somewhere else and make a new community, whereas it's really hard for Louis to do that. Exactly. So Louis wants to stay with the community that he's had, but it becomes increasingly like harder and harder to do, and then until it ultimately falls apart. And when it falls apart, that kind of adds to why he's so eager to add Claudia to the family and to keep Claudia and like have this relationship with her that he has, because like, we a million years ago, on like a voice message exchange between us, we kind of talked about how like, in the Rue Royale house, Jesus, that's hard for me to say, Louis is able to be queer but not Black, and then when he's in his family's house, he's able to be Black but not queer. And so when Claudia joins the family, he's able to be both. Yes. In his home. And you can kind of feel that with his overeagerness at having this new family member, how sometimes he like oversteps what Claudia's wants and needs and desires are. But it's because of that desire to have that specific type of community again. And I think a lot of people, it is, yes, a desire, because people like, he wanted to have a baby, but like, it's kind of like, to have a baby would mean that he has another Black person in the house. Yes. Yes, I was gonna bring it back to like the whole tradwife thing again, because like, I don't think it's like, it's not so much like, oh, he's like, dying to be barefoot and pregnant. It's just like, if I were to have a baby, that means that he wants, the basic, like, he does want that like family. Yeah, he does want family. Like, that's one thing that we hear him voices. Express that desire. Yeah, he voices it. Yeah. But like, when it gets down to it,
having that like Black family. Like it's so important.
And then we can see how like because he has this relationship with Claudia, how jealous Lestat gets, because he can't relate to them on that specific level. And it, of course, being metaphor, like in the, what's the word for when it's being made into a metaphor on the show by they can communicate telepathically, where Lestat cannot communicate telepathically with either of them. And when they're having that telepathic conversation at the very, like, the night she's turned, he's like, what are you saying? What's going on? And he's like really like annoyed by it. And it's because he's not privy to what
he needs to stay out of Black business.
He's just like, and that's and he feels entitled to
he does
to that knowledge, to that connection as well. And you can feel like whenever they're connecting, and he's just like, because he can tell when they're communicating telepathically, and he knows that he doesn't know what they're saying. And it's like such a perfect metaphor for that, like, sort of multiracial family. And that, it's so good, so potent. But it also adds to, I think, like the isolation of Louis and Claudia, where they're the only two who really understand what they're going through as two Black vampires, especially in that household, and having to form that connection. Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great as a narrative. Yeah, it's bad as an experience.
Yeah, I'm like, oof. Yeah, God, because they were going through it. Let me tell you.
But also, like, to jump and like kind of connecting a couple of threads, like this idea, like this the way that a lot of people conceptualize that trad wife / like good Catholic wife, what weirdly like mentality of Louis, like with Lestat, and the Lestat being very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like being I guess like irritated at being blocked out from the relationship between Louis and Claudia. I'm gonna connect these two. I'm gonna bridge these two. Or like Lestat being ostracized from Louis in regards to he isn't Black and therefore they don't have that sort of understanding of each other. Is when a lot of people do have
also,
that, like,
I know you're about to say something, but also, why is that? Because Louis tries to like explain things to him, but he doesn't want to explain things
because
to him.
To have like, that explained to him would have to Lestat would have to confess to two things. One, he doesn't know everything, and two,
admit that he has like that power. As like, that too.
I guess also another thing, but the other thing I was gonna say was that Lestat, I think, does firmly believe that race or like doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now that you're a vampire, like
race
it doesn't matter.
And but then in order to have that explained to him, he would have to like unpack. Not unpack, but like have to saying? Like understand that race still does matter. I'm trying to see what you were trying to say. Okay. So he's not going to do that, and he doesn't want to obviously do that because it doesn't fit into the worldview he's constructed. But yeah, going into that, I think when a lot of people have this like view of Louis of like, honestly, like virginal Louis, they ignore his relationship with Jonah, where he had this really important or like very significant relationship with Jonah. They seem to have like a really good, at the very baseline, friendship, and then this like romantic connection on top of it. And Lestat freaking out, like part of his freak out, there's a lot of things that I think were part of the freak out, but one part of it is that like he, at least it was evident to me when I was watching it, that like the connection that he perceived between Louis and Jonah does come from the fact that they're both Black gay men who grew up in the South. Yeah. And Lestat cannot connect to them on that level, or connect to Louis with them. Connect to Louis on that level, where he had a very different experience with queerness, both time period where he's from and also his race. And so this like idea of like, well, Louis gonna leave me for someone who could understand him better. And so he pitches this huge fit and, you know, invites all those white soldiers to the house. Which
also was weird. And see how intentional that was?
He's like, I can't risk it.
Like, that was real interesting.
And then also slut shames Louis by being like, well, you can fuck them and I can eat them.
Yeah, that was
if you like soldiers so much, here's a whole house full, go crazy. And
that just pissed me off again, remembering that. Just got pissed off.
Yeah. So it's like this very clear divide between them, and this this is just a point in which they're never gonna understand each other. Mm-hmm. And even if Louis were to explain his experience, there's a point where you can intellectually know, but you don't know unless you experience. Yeah. And Lestat's never gonna experience that. And I think that's also a frustration, and also like a reason why he doesn't even want to learn in the first place. Yeah. He's just like, well, what's it matter? You know? So I might, whatever. I'm just gonna pretend like it doesn't exist. And that I think is another point of alienation for Louis, of just like, this is a huge part of my life and my experience, and I can't talk about it with Lestat.
And how isolating is that? Like, he's isolated in so many ways. For almost
a decade, he couldn't really talk about race with his partner.
Which is crazy. It's like, because it's so significant to how he has to, like, live his life. Even more so, like, just on a day-to-day basis, even, like, now, obviously. But, like, especially back then, like... and just having a partner who refuses to engage with you.
Because we see that refusal in that episode too. I really love that conversation in episode 2 because it gives a insight that is so crucial, which is like, this is a conversation they have a lot, or at least had a lot. And this is how Lestat responds to it each time, which is dismissively. And then his apology fucking sucks. Yeah. When he's just like, if disrespect was done to you, that pissed me off too. What do you mean if? And it's just like, Louis said that it was. So either you believe Louis or you don't. You think Louis being hysterical or think that Louis exaggerating, or you don't. So like, to be like, if this was done, then I would also be upset. And it's just like, that, you don't, shut the fuck up. It's so condescending and patronizing. And that's what Louis was putting up with for this whole time. This person who just pretended like race wasn't real. So, it's crazy.
So he's just, like, isolated in so many ways. He's slowly losing, like, his community, his family. And then also his husband refuses to talk about the full experiences that are his, like, and so we can see why he's so depressed, at least part of it.
And why he's so depressed, and why he, like, because, like, I would say from the very beginning, one of Louis' biggest drives is a desire for control over his life. And one of the what's it called, like, the promises that Lestat gives him is ultimately control over his life. And he kind of makes it sound like you will get to choose what hat you wear. And then he doesn't.
That's not what happens.
And then we see Louis develops this eating disorder, because it's like, as with, like, a lot of people develop eating disorders when they feel like they don't have control over their lives. And it's just kind of like, I can't control what happens to me. I can't control, all this. But what I can control is what I eat or what I don't. And so Louis also has this morality tied to it, because he does have to kill people to eat. And he's struggling with that. And what that means. Because, reasonably, he's struggling with that and what that means and how that's going to look. And when he tries to have this conversation with Lestat about it, Lestat's very dismissive. Again, and it has to do with, like, another thing of, like, it's kind of similar to race, where it's like, if Lestat is like, fine, tell me about, your experience, then he has to reconcile with things about himself and his own worldview. It's the same with the food, where it's like,
well, I don't have a problem with it. So like,
yeah, well, it's like, well, Lestat did have a problem with it at some point, but it's like, once I do have to have this conversation about morality, now I have to consider what I'm doing and what that means, and I don't want to. So we're shutting this down. But Louis wants to at least consider or think about it and be mindful in how he goes throughout the world. And with this pushback from Lestat, with all this other stuff, he goes very extreme. And by doing so, kind of starts to shrink. He loses all his energy. He can barely hold up the book he's reading. And it's a bid for control, for control over what he's going to be. What type of vampire am I?
Also, Lestat's response to it's also very racialized.
Oh, yeah.
Bringing in a white woman into their home, while Louis, like you said, can barely hold his book. That was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like Lestat being bringing Antoinette in and being like, I could have this, but I chose you.
Yeah, so
it's like
get your act together.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah, in fact, it would be easier for Lestat to be with Antoinette than it would be for him to be with Louis, but he's trying to be like, well, I chose you instead, so go on. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's good to talk about this because people do want to ignore
and it is a purposeful taunt. I do think he wanted Louis to react with anger and to kill Antoinette. Because it would he would ultimately be doing what Lestat wants him to, which is eat people. But Louis doesn't, because Louis stubborn. I think Louis knows, and so he's like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna rise to that.
Yeah.
I don't have time for your foolishness.
Yeah, I'm going out to eat some rats.
Period.
Yeah, and I think this, to me, this control, his bid for his desire for control, I think is why Le Monde lasted as long as it did.
Yeah. Yeah, because after
he gets to feel like he has a say. He gets to feel like he has control.
However
true is that? Yeah. But it's the illusion in him feeling a sense of security. And I remember another old conversation we had is I feel like you can tell how comfortable Louis is in a relationship with how comfortable he feels arguing with his partner. Because we see Louis pre-episode 6 yelling at Lestat.
Yeah.
Getting in his face. He was fine to be literally told him to shut the fuck up.
Exactly.
And then we see I don't know how heightened it was, but that extra scene of the domestic violence scene where Louis is I'm gonna fucking kill you. And him feeling comfortable to be confident enough to be I'm going to kill you. And then the stark contrast to episode 6, where he's very walking on eggshells, very much trying to keep the peace because he doesn't feel comfortable. Because no matter how much, it doesn't matter if Lestat is sincere or not in his expression that that was a one-time thing. That can never be proven. He can't promise that.
And I do think it's really weird that people use those last few episodes to really lean into trad wife Louis.
Oh yeah,
and I'm this was a response to the domestic violence. Yeah, this is
symptoms of IPV.
Yeah, this is not who Louis has been this whole entire time.
Yeah, no, not at all. And he's very scared. You can feel that he's it's almost like he's talking to a tiger in the room. Very much okay, everyone, let's trying to placate this, because he doesn't now. He doesn't trust him, and he does not know. Now that he sees the full extent. What was the
book that he was reading?
Oh, the On Marriage or whatever.
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, there's that Edward something book on marriage, where it's actually written by a gay man during the Edwardian period, kind of talking about the I very reductively describe it as like how heterosexuality is doomed, but it's just like the way that marriage as it existed in that time is not sustainable, and it relies on this imbalance between a husband and a wife, and a wife making herself smaller and shrinking herself to fit into this role, and which is basically what happened.
Yeah, and we see. I don't know. I'm bringing this up also because I have seen recently people talk about it as if it was like Louise is like, I just want to make this
like
work.
He's reading like a couples therapy book instead of a book that's a biting commentary
processing
on marriage.
What has happened to him.
Yeah.
And it's
and like at that point, because when he is reading that book, that's also right before he throws Lestat's coffin out the window. This is like he's trying to reconcile with a lot, and trying to it reminds me also, we had another conversation not too long ago about how like the Louis talking about in the season 2 finale, that whole monologue about the finding himself at the altar again and again, and how that's not a romantic scene about him and Lestat. It's more about like how he wishes he could somehow have, if he was somehow strong enough, if he had done enough things in his past that would have fortified his will, and then maybe he could have resisted Lestat, and then none of these bad things would have happened. Because like to him, I feel like the crux of everything bad that happened was this giving in to Lestat and falling in love with Lestat. And if he had been a stronger person, then none of this would have happened. And I think that goes with the book, in my opinion, where like this is an attempt at trying to fortify himself against Lestat coming, because they said the phone was ringing off the hook. So like reminding himself what happened, reminding himself of like this situation, so that he is strong enough to resist Lestat, but then ultimately him not being able to. And that's not so much romantic as it is like it feels like resigned, yeah, or like a defeatist.
Yes.
It's really good.
And sad.
Yeah. But yeah, also, yeah, and that thing of like the arguing, and then like, to circle back, like when we see him with Armand 77 years on, the end of episode 4, where they're yelling at each other, and like you can hear Daniel's on his little laptop, and you can hear them like, it sounds like your parents when they're like fighting in the other room, and you're on your computer and you're just gonna put your earbuds in because they're fighting through the wall. And it's just like the fact that he still feels comfortable enough to yell at Armand and like get into this yelling match and be confident that it's not going to end with him being physically hurt. That says a lot.
That does say, yeah, it does.
It says a lot about their relationship, especially because he has experienced domestic violence, that he feels confident enough to scream at Armand and like say things to him, unkind things, and know that he's physically safe.
Yeah. Now we can still get into Armand, though, and which we will get into Armand, because this is another. So Lestat and Louis' relationship and Armand and Louis' relationship obviously look very different, and we started off talking about how Louis does still exist in these feminine roles. Because let me just say something, because I did see something, a little something, like, thanks for watching and listening to our podcast, but I did see something, and some tags in response to what we talked about last week. And I do want to reiterate that, like, Louis does exist in like these feminine roles in the relationships that he's in, both with like Louis and both Lestat and Armand. And he also, there is a femininity in like how he like presents himself. I say a lot of people don't really understand it, again, because people don't really understand Black queerness. But it's very clearly there.
Yeah, it's a femininity, because like when Jacob was saying he was inspired by Eartha Kitt and Grace Jones, this is a Black femininity, a very specific type of Black femininity. and I would say specifically Grace Jones, it's very involved in like the queer community as well, of like this very like self-realized like type of woman that he is in Dubai.
Yeah. And so the opposition I have is when people lean into more of this white womanhood for Louis, and places these ideas that don't actually fit within him. Like, we can like explore femininity with Louis, but like we need to really look at it through a different lens,
an intersectional one, perhaps, that takes into account queerness and also blackness.
Exactly. A lot of you aren't doing it right.
Yeah, they want to make him this white gothic heroine, and it's just like he's a gothic heroine, but you have to look at femininity a little differently, because gender and gender expression, gender performance is all tied to race.
Exactly.
Because like we even see him and masculinity being like, when the word being emasculated, that's used in episode 1, and it's like Louis, by nature of being a black gay man, is not allowed full access to being a man because of those access. And so on the similar note, it's like femininity looks different when you are black because of that being barred from
white womanhood
on by the very nature of being black. It doesn't look the same. Keeping that in mind when we're like having those conversations
about family. So I just want to make that clear, because I'm not hypermasculine Louis needs to be, we need to get that up out of here, but also there is a balance, and we just need to examine Louis through a lens of like black femininity.
And also coming back to misogyny a little bit, I don't understand why confidence is being tied to masculinity.
Yeah.
When femininity can be like confidence can be feminine.
Yeah.
So like having a person be very self-assured and being self-actualized, I don't see how that's devoid of femininity.
Yeah.
And I think you should do some examination if you see those things as even dominance being seen as masculine as opposed to a feminine trait.
And we'll get that. We'll get to that. I do want to get back to, since we are talking about like him in these like feminine roles, and we talked about Louis and Lestat. Let's talk about
let's kind of lean towards Louis and Armand when I was talking about dominance and confidence.
Yeah, but before we get into that, I really want to talk about like, because we mainly focused in how like Lestat has the power in that relationship, and that's what informs what the roles look like. And Armand also has the real true power in the relationship, and we see the way that like these roles happen with Armand, and the way that like his abuse manifests is through like gaslighting Louis.
Oh yeah, and the way
and treating him like that like hysterical woman.
Oh my god, yeah, I think because I had seen someone talking about like Armand and gaslighting, and talking about specifically the photos incident, about like, because somehow the fact that he didn't make Louis think that he put the photos in there was a failure of gaslighting. It wasn't, because there's a lot of aspects of gaslighting. One of them is making the person look crazy. You
feel like you're crazy, but then also making
other people think you're crazy. And so putting these photos, just a couple, it wasn't like a whole lot, just into the Paris collection in such a way that made Louis be like, why did you do that? Why did you put those photos in? And like Armand being like, I don't know, maybe the staff did it. Him being like, what is this doing here? In front of Daniel, is supposed to make it look like Louis is not stable. Not even that Louis did it, but that Louis is making a big deal out of this non-issue.
And he already planted those seeds.
Oh my god!
Already, when he was like, "Hey, we're gonna do this together."
Oh my god! Yeah, I didn't realize until the rewatch that like when
we're gonna let's tag team Daniel. We got this. And then when they came in and Louis like coming in hot, like absolutely not.
Yeah, and then
Armand's like, "Oh my god."
Well, Armand takes like the little bone of like being like, like something kind of nicer. And then at the top of episode 3, him being like, I'm so sorry that Louis did that. So sorry
for Louis. Yeah. I'm so sorry about Louis.
That he that was really inappropriate, and I apologize on his behalf, and all of this. And that was part of the plan. Yeah, because, like, he wants... You could see when Louis started to remember things, because it was little things that he was remembering, like, oh, that didn't happen in this order, because, like, Louis... having this specific,
and that's when Armand storms off in the first episode. Yes. And then
that's when he says that Louis should take a break.
Yeah.
And then, but like that, him having the specific like fogginess of memory, because like it's hard to remember things.
Shit, I forget everything these days.
Yeah. So, but then like we see that one tiny little like. I don't know if you've seen that meme of the person having the lock on the little barrier on the door is the Cheeto. And it's just like, this is the only thing keeping the outside out. And it's him not remembering where Sam the vampire was during the trial.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's like Louis being like, no, wait, this conversation didn't happen then, it happened now. And Armand being like, I've got to do something. I've got to make Louis seem unstable. I've got to make Louis question this, that, and the other. So that we can keep this order of events so that my house of cards it's one good blow away from just collapsing. And that's what happens when you build your house on sand. But yes, anyway, all that to be like, he has this plan. He tries to get Louis in on it. When Louis does, he's like, sure, yeah, we're a team. And we see that like Louis believes, and some of it is reinforced by repetition and this like thing, like, because I'm thinking of the Armand preserves my happiness even when I don't.
That was crazy. I'm not gonna. That was real wild. I was like,
and it's just like these things that Armand has told him so much that they just become like internalized things that he accepts as truth. And so he's like, all right, Armand wants me to be my best self. He wants me to be as happy as I can be. Which I don't think is necessarily wrong, but I think Armand has a very different idea of what happiness looks like.
I think that he does actually want that, but the ways he goes about it and
bad. It's not good. Yeah,
like okay.
And so him doing this whole like the way that he gaslights him is by making Louis have to rely on Armand to fill in some blanks, but also then he turns around and he's like, sorry about my crazy wife, Daniel. Sometimes she can act out.
We should have known from right then. Louis can sometimes act out. We should have known right then.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's a very, like, the Louis being put in that position and being treated that way is very, I
mean, that's why we have that, like, that amazing poster, the gaslight.
Oh, that straight up references gaslight.
Straight up, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's a very specific type of emotional abuse that like
and very gendered.
Yeah, so I was like that is gendered. So yeah. But yeah, he is playing these feminine roles,
but now it's like walking back just a little bit because we talked about what Louis and Lestat's relationship looked like and blah blah. Is a very like your standard,
very
traditional husband and wife, type of dynamic, and then you have Louis, who's like, I
want something different.
I need something different. He's out. He gets to Paris, and he's like, hitting up the park.
He's cruising.
He's in his hot girl era. He's like, and he meets Armand, and
I think one of the things that's really important about this relationship is that, like, whereas Louis and Lestat is very, like we said, like, models a heterosexual relationship, and how abuse manifests in those relationships, Louis and Armand's relationship is a very queer relationship, and it's about abuse manifesting in that dynamic. And I think another thing, because it is a queer relationship, when we talk about the BDSM aspect of it, we have to look at queer BDSM.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of the way that people talk about it, you can tell that all they know is 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, they think that...
And they think a dom is like a guy who's just like get on your knees.
Super masculine. It's like they saw this scene on the bench and they're like, oh, so Louis like reverting back to like this and this and this and this and this and that.
Yeah, like this
and placing this hyper masculinity on him. And I'm like, y'all don't know shit.
And also like the gesture that he has. Okay, the two things that he does that are these moments of like dominance are very feminine.
Yeah.
Take the umbrella and keep me from being rained on. Light my cigarette for me. Are you joking me?
I'm kicking my feet right now.
All I can think of is like there's two.
He's also real though, because like
there's these two scenes. I can think of like the scene in like Milena where like she has the cigarette and all the people come in with the lighter. But then also like I also think of in the X-Files where like Scully puts in the cigarette and she's just like looking around and everyone at the bar is like trying, like reaching in and fighting to be the one who lights her cigarette. And it's like, this is feminine.
Yeah, there's been such a resistance to like Louis being able to like be a dom, because I think people are trying to put him in this very narrow box. He's like, oh, so he's just like this like hyper masculine daddy dom. The very thought, I just got grossed out. Don't even. I'm about to jump out my window right now. I'm on the 3rd floor. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not what this is.
Yeah, and it made me think of I had found this one thing of from this book called Queer BDSM Intimacies. But like it was talking about like service in the specific the specific relationship. It was like between lesbians. Mm-hmm. I think it works for Lumond.
I mean,
but
very Yuri coded.
Yeah, I had made a joke that like you can tell that Louis and Armand are lesbians because people stopped caring about them to focus on the relationships with men.
Well,
LOL. But yeah, anyway, like this like idea of like service and like how service operates in this BDSM relationship and how the power exchange it's not clear cut because like so like one of the things that talks about is like service entailing like taking care of details of making sure everything is perfect for like the dom or the top. It says top in the thing, but sometimes in these older BDSM things they use top and dom interchangeably, which is not necessarily correct.
Yeah.
But
those are two different things.
Yeah. But yes, so like and that's basically exactly what we see Armand doing in his fake Rashid role play of like the dutiful PA who makes sure that everything is taken care of and his schedule is perfect and all of this thing. Like,
but it's like an infinity circle because then he's controlling what like
because
Louis is also doing.
Yeah, because like for example, if like he takes care of if he sets up what he's gonna eat that day, he's chosen what Louis is eating. If he if he takes care of like, oh, I'm gonna organize a schedule, he's chosen what he's doing that
You'll
day.
take this in this business meeting today. You'll meet with this and this and this person today.
Yeah, it is service, but it is underhanded control masked as service. And isn't that their whole relationship?
Yeah.
Because like also with BDSM, the dom serves the sub.
Exactly. See, that's the other thing, because we talked about this before, because it really annoys me, because I feel like a lot of people who try to have
Subs
these conversations
have more power.
do not understand how actual BDSM is supposed to work. In an actual like healthy BDSM relationship, it's the sub who has all the power. The sub is the one who lays out what is going to happen, and then the dom then does that. Like they set the boundaries, they set what they want from certain scenes, blah blah blah. And then they move from that. Like, the sub has the most power, really, in that and the thing dynamic.
That's so important to me is, like, while we do see, like, Louis have these, like, we see him invoke he's the one to, like, at first be like, I'm a little wet.
Yeah.
To note the umbrella.
But it was, like, it's, like, an open thing. He's, like, you can do you want to, like, take a bite of this apple?
But also, like, it is Armand who then confirms the relationship. And also, like, people misreading the Arun thing. Like, like Louis saying Arun. And it's supposed to be, like...
more like, I see you.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do.
I see who you are behind all these like roles that you've been placed in.
Yeah,
is what was happening there. But it's people like, have like
because he's trying to do, and I heard Jacob say something that I think a lot of people construed a different way. Where he said that Louis has become the Lestat in this relationship. But what he's saying, I think it's because that scene parallels the church scene, where it's like, who are you behind these roles? Who do you want to be? Is what Louis is saying to Armand on the bench, which is what Lestat said to him in the church. But Louis means it.
Yeah, and also Lestat didn't ask a question.
No, he just said you're also like Armand told Louis, I don't want this job. Yeah. Who am I behind all these roles I've been forced to have? Whether it's Amadeo, whether it's Armand. And Louis just like, let's step back. Before you were Amadeo, before you were Armand, you were Arun. Who do you want to be next? Yeah. And Armand's like, I want to be your baby.
Oh God. We're gonna get into Armand, but that's basic. You know, that kind of is what he wanted, considering how he finds himself in Claudia's.
He sleeps in Claudia's coffin.
Anyways, he's fucked up.
I will have a field day when we talk about Armand.
There's a lot going on with that guy.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but yeah, so it's like Armand is one who's like, this is what I want. And so Louis like, all right, cool. Then I can do that. Yeah. And I think it also works out really well for Louis because Louis wants something very different from what he had before. You can see with how hesitant he is to commit to a relationship. When with Lestat, he basically U-hauled. Yeah. But in this one, he's like, I don't know if I want to outright say that we're together.
Because it's scary. Like, he has... That's my cat.
He has trauma.
He has a lot of trauma.
And he's trying not to do the same thing again. And one of the things I think is really important about, like...
something and then it not know... Especially with like, a very powerful vampire.
And I think that's why, like, in a lot of those scenes, we do see the ghost Lestat. Because he's trying to remind himself,
like, a reminder.
Yeah, this is what happened last time. And, like, especially in the museum scene, where we do get it, it's like, oh my God, one of the most, like, to me, obvious, like... signals that this is what this is when Louis shines the light on Ghost Lestat and Armand says I don't like using my power like that, which is such a Lestat line, and to have that superimposed over Lestat himself is Louis trying to remind himself, you don't want the same thing to happen again. Yes. I'm trying to keep the same thing from happening again, and I think Armand knows that, which is why he does something different. Yeah. Which is like, I'm going to
actually like gives like a piece of himself.
And he's like, I'm going to be very vulnerable with you on multiple accounts. I am telling you about my past, but also I'm telling you, when you ask me the question, who are you? I can't answer that question, which is very, very vulnerable. And
Louis responds to that.
And I think it's like, Armand is taking a really big swing because he did that before with Lestat, and Lestat left. And so he's like, let me try this one more time, and Louis stays. Yeah. And I think there's never been more relief in his life than in that moment. But yeah, so like, Louis also, I think, really responded to it because while it is, I think, calculated on Armand's part, I think two things can be true, which is it's calculated and sincere.
I feel like that's...
You can calculate sincerity. Yeah. And Louis responded to that by being like, I want to take care of you, which also... I think is also a very nurturing act. So it's like dominance through nurturing.
Exactly. Because let's get into that. Because like Louis is a very nurturing person.
Oh yeah, we see him take care of his brother. We see him and really thrive and do that. And we see him take care of Claudia, and then he kind of takes care of.
And I think that's why this like little BDSM dynamic that they have reflects that and leans more into this like feminine role through like BDSM. Like he's just he's a nurturing person, and so. And this is reflected in that.
Yeah. And it's, I think, like, people, like, trying to make it a lot more of a violent or harsher thing we see is not true. Yeah. Because, like, when we see, like, the scene in the park with the, are you asking me or making me? And, like, Louis can kind of tell.
Let's not do that right now.
Yeah, he takes, like, this read and he sees, like, that Armand is trying... I don't say it's what am I trying to say? He's evoking their dynamic for something that would be very fucked up, which is him being very clear that he has this boundary, and essentially asking Louis, are you going to violate my boundary? Is that what you want to do here? And Louis being like, what is wrong with you?
Sorry.
Like, no,
he's like,
that's
no,
not what this is.
Okay.
And like turning that off and being like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think also with this also like idea of like Louis re-traumatizing Armand.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Armand doesn't need anyone else to re-traumatize himself. He'll do that on his own.
I'm gonna need y'all to cut that shit out.
Yeah, especially because like, if we're specifically talking about like his relationship with Marius, like Marius didn't ask, or when he asked, it wasn't a question.
Yeah.
Or not a genuine question. And also, Armand had less power, and if he was being forced to do something, he really didn't have any recourse, whereas with Louis, he does.
Yeah. And
we see it in episode 5. Yeah. Like that, if he doesn't like it, he will not do it. Yeah. If he has a problem with it, oh boy. You'll know. But yeah, so this idea that somehow Louis is able to force him or whatever, but also
there's just a lot of like weird ideas around their BDSM relationship and around Louis.
And I think it has a lot to do with sexuality. Yeah, and like this.
They rather try to act like Louis is like harming Armand, or Louis harming himself. Yeah. Which is also crazy, and I feel like people don't want to let Louis have like any kind of agency
or like, even complexity.
Yeah, complexity, agency. Like he comes to Paris and he's like, this is a place for exploration for him.
Yeah, he says that multiple times, that Paris was a place where he was able to have this sexual exploration. Also because, and this is really important, as opposed to New Orleans, homosexuality wasn't illegal in Paris at the time. So he's able to kiss Armand on the street, walk and be out with him. Yeah. And that's novel. And we see like Louis enjoying sort of this freedom of like this, what's the word term he uses, laissez-aller, like attitudes toward like sex and sexuality in this environment, and thriving and getting to try stuff out. And like I think part of that is like this less non-traditional, because also we know that like Louis and Armand are open. Yeah. And he has that freedom to go out and do whatever. And like with Lestat, where Lestat said, you're like, okay to do that, but then immediately flipped out. Yeah. We're like Armand has shown he really doesn't fucking care.
He only cares if it seems like you have too big of a connection. He's like, what do you mean that you're
he's like, what do you mean if Louis had fucked Daniel, I don't think he would have been like, whatever. But since he was like, you were emotionally vulnerable with someone who wasn't me, like that's where it comes down to.
Yeah. Oh god.
Because like Louis had slept with 128 other men. Yeah. And Armand was like, whatever. Doesn't matter. But then like he was like, I'm gonna tell you about these feelings that I felt, and Armand's like, I'm killing myself. I'm killing you, I'm killing myself, I'm killing this guy. We're all going down. Yeah. Yikes. But yeah, but like before that point, like literally feeling like he has freedom in this relationship and to try stuff. And they have thirds and all of this.
His little guys.
His young man. His little guys. Yeah. But yeah, so like, but I also think it's like this discomfort with really like looking at queer sexuality and black queer sexuality and black sexuality without seeing it. Because for some reason, when Louis is in this dom role, suddenly they either assume whether it's them voicing displeasure with the dom relationship or being too enthusiastic about it, hypermasculinating and aggression. Yeah. And I'm like, why is that tied to black sexuality?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's like a nice sweet spot. Yeah. And everyone wants to take it way too fucking far in either direction. And how come no one
seems to have heard of a femdom?
I know, like, what the fuck? We love a femdom. I say it every single time, okay? Yeah. Like, y'all need to get on board. Y'all have never been to the goth clubs, apparently. I can see that, but, some of us have.
It's really, and I think it's a really interesting aspect of Louis about being able to I think he feels like getting to have these two aspects of himself, which is being self-assured, being confident, being quote unquote in charge, while also being a caretaker, being nurturing, you know, taking care of those that he cares about.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of feel in Paris him feeling like, I'm not going to compromise.
Yeah. As Eartha Kitt said.
Yeah.
Period. And that's where we come back around. We come back around.
Yeah, this very specific type of femininity that Louis has.
Thank you, Jacob Anderson, for noting that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Like, honestly, a genius.
Yeah. Ugh, I love it. I think that's why, like, it's one of the reasons why I really do love the Lumond relationship, is getting to see how, for the most part, I would say both of them get to have, like, all these prickly edges to them, that kind of come together in this really good way that I'm like, I know this is beside the point, but I really feel like if the circumstances had been different when they met,
Armand
they really would have worked
evil.
Out. Yeah.
If Armand wasn't evil, I think that the relationship would have been perfect. I think that both of them provided what the other person needed and what was like looking for.
I also think that's something that Louis got to do in that relationship was really embrace how much of an intellectual he is.
Yes. Oh yeah, he got to have like the conversation.
Because we see Louis try and have these conversations with Lestat, and it's kind of like shut down. We see it on the bench when he's talking about the book, and then going into that morality, and then we see him when he's trying to talk about Madame Bovary, and Lestat's like, "You sound fucking pretentious." But then he's having this conversation about like complex morality, and Armand's like, "What about this?"
On it.
Yeah. What about this and the other? Argument as foreplay, as Daniel says, but it's true.
Well,
you know. Yeah, and like, it's so great, like, seeing all these different aspects of him, because he is an intellectual. He is, love him. Yeah. Love this guy.
Yeah. Aw, my fucking wife.
And this is beside the point. I just thought of it with like the line, but like, I really do think it's really interesting, like, the people that we see him put himself in a caretaking role with, Paul, Claudia, Armand, all having this element of like madness to them, and being like, I'm taking care of you. I'm gonna make sure no one hurts you, and that you like, I got you. You can't see me because this is the podcast, but I'm doing like a hugging, like a holding gesture of like, I have you. Don't worry. I'm not like, understanding that there's all these like elements of danger, and being like, I'm going to take care of you. Yeah. You're my baby. My baby. My baby.
Yeah, so like, and what we already said, like, part of, I feel like, the issue within the fandom is just a lack of understanding of like Black queerness.
I also think something that annoys me, that I think is still related, because to me it's very racialized, is when people assume the bed death or like impotence on Louis and Armand's end, it has a tone.
Yeah. It's, I think it goes back to like this weird ownership that we kind of talked about. I think, well, we did talk about.
Yeah, the government assigned white boys.
In our first episode. And it's like, there's a lot of ownership that happens, that people feel like, whether Lestat has his ownership over Louis, or Daniel has his ownership over Armand, which we haven't fucking seen them, but we're not going to talk about that right now, because that, we can save that for the Armand episode.
Oh my god.
But yeah, there's like this ownership over Louis, how Lestat is the only man that like he can ever be with that can like satisfy him, even, which is why I think we also see how like this like lack of really acknowledgement of like his relation with even Jonah as well. Like there's that ownership again there, where the only relationship that really matters is like Lestat. And yes, his relationship with Lestat is extremely significant. But it's not the only relationship. Exactly. It's not the only relationship he's ever had. And I think it's extremely, extremely, it's racist really to be like, the only way he can be satisfied is if a white man fucks him. Yeah. Like, what? Yeah. Run that back?
And, like, it's also this, like, it's like a double emasculation of both Louis and Armand, of being like, neither one of them are quote unquote man enough to satisfy the other. Yeah. And it's like, I think they're doing fine. Yeah. A lot of things are going wrong in that relationship. The sex is not one of them.
It's not.
It's probably the only thing that's going right.
Damn.
Like, consistently. So, like, you can't rely. It's like a lot of things will come and go, but I can tell you one thing.
Did we not see Louis after Armand put it down on him?
Oh, yeah. I was also talking at the top of season 2, episode 5, where, like, Louis and Armand were both like, tee.
I know.
Sitting at that table, like,
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. Where you had to reverse. Louis, you put a little something on him as well. Yeah. And they were glowing.
Yeah, the person who did like that diagram of like all the surfaces upon which they could fuck.
Yeah,
and like that bedroom, they're like, here it is.
They were glowing.
Did Daniel get any sleep that night? Probably not, for multiple reasons. He had an intense revelation via that audio file, and then also lying in bed that night, he was like, God, I can hear him through the wall.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, so
arguing as foreplay.
Yeah.
They were fighting.
They both be putting it down. And they both be having a good time. So, like, let's not do all that. Because it gets really weird. Maybe y'all think it's just good fun, but it's weird.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people need to understand that, like, you may be joking, but a good number of the people agreeing with you are not.
Yeah.
So, like, let's be mindful.
Let's be demure.
Yeah.
That means keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
But
let's
yeah,
be mindful. Let's not accidentally further racial caricatures when we're making our jokes, ladies.
Mm-hmm. Well. But yeah, like it is really frustrating though, seeing that. Yeah. But once again.
Well, sorry, you finished what you were saying. I got excited.
Or were you moving to a different topic?
On. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was
you were finishing your thought, and
Well, I'm done with that because I was actually before we took a minor break, I was about to start moving this into, because I wanted to talk about all this also comes back down to people not really understanding, like, Black sexuality or whatever. And so, yes, I'm, like, super, super down for, like, Femme Louis. And, like, playing with like Louis and like Black womanhood and whatnot, but I also really want to be very intentional about also still having conversations about him and his experience as a gay man, and also include that in the conversation because that's also very important.
Yeah,
and I think we have to talk about that as well, because his experience as a gay man informs a lot. It informs the way that he's like treated by people, and how he has to like move through the world. Particularly, I wanted to talk about how like Daniel's piece in this. Daniel's piece. We're gonna talk. We can talk about the white boys sometimes, but it's so that I can be like, here's how your fave is racist.
Yeah. Well, also because like it feeds into that experience. We're like,
yes,
we have this like, I want you to get into it because I know you have a lot to say about it. But like Daniel as a older white gay man, how he treats.
Bye.
Well, I'm using gay as
I know. I'm just
older white queer man.
Yeah, there you go.
How he treats Louis, how he treats Armand, and like how it has a lot to do with that's not like one off, or like it speaks to a larger issue. He's
obviously like he's attracted to both of them.
He has eyes. He
has eyes. Unfortunately. And yet the way he treats them, like, with this weird morality and superiority, and constantly talks down to them, I think it's very reminiscent of, like, something that we already kind of see within the queer space, and how we see a lot of young black men be kind of targeted by white older men. There's actually This is actually kind of like, it gets kind of weird, very weird sometimes. Not even just like with like racism, but like there's a lot of using their power, over the power that they have over them, to kind of just like manipulate these young black men. I think it's real weird. But yeah, I feel like Daniel kind of models that, because he's clearly, like you said, he's clearly attracted to them, but then he needs to he feels the need to like put them in their place.
Yes.
As well.
It's like he constantly asserts intellectual superiority above them, and it's like, we know that Louis wouldn't have gotten the level of education that Daniel has gotten in the present day, or like, and Armand had no formal education. And when, like, Daniel thought that Armand was Rashid, he's also assuming that he has. Yeah, he's also assuming that he has more of an education than a PA. So he kind of like over and over and over again asserts his dominance as like, he's like, I'm the smartest guy in this room. Yes. I'm the most educated. And we see him like, because I'm thinking of like when Louis was talking about his experience with Lestat in episode 2, and Daniel's just like, to the shame of queer theorists everywhere. Yeah. Or like trying to invoke like academic language.
And he does this repeatedly.
Yes, to discredit Louis. And then we see him do it with, I would say, real Rashid too, with the, you ever read Moby Dick, real Rashid?
Yeah, that was,
which is strange.
He has a weird tone with him.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, he has the least power in the room in the sense that he is a human surrounded by 2 vampires. Yeah. He's using the only access of privilege he does have, which is he's white. Yeah. And you then like I was saying, you see him kind of leverage that when he's talking to Armand Sheed. I think, and we mentioned this comment, but like with his sexualized comments towards him as well, when he's just like, "Are you and Louis?" ... And the Ren Boy comment, and like all of these like little comments about him, and then his comments about Louis too, and like him trying to tell Louis that he's wrong at every turn. When Louis trying to talk about his experience with abuse, and he makes a little quip of like, it was only the one time, officer, and like all of these like little quips, and it's just like trying to make himself seem like he's smarter. He's trying to win the interview, as opposed to listen to what is being said to him.
He's a shitty journalist.
Well, he's coming at it like, he's doing a very specific type of investigative journalism that is not necessary for a biography. Yeah. Like, he's coming at it like, Louis is like,
he's still in his feelings,
criminal, and he's trying to like get the real story out of him. Yeah. When Louis is like, I want to tell you about this really my life story.
When Louis like and invited him catharsis. Out here. Yeah. In the first place, like, this is not a guy that you're trying to like sniff out like the lies that he's telling. Like, he's wanting to go through this like journey like with you to help figure out, but really be able to tell his story and like gather all the pieces in his brain and make them all like make sense. But Daniel's too busy being like, well, I caught you with another lie. Yeah. And I'm like, can you shut the fuck up, man?
Yeah. Yeah. I really do love in season 2 when like, Daniel starts making jokes about the memory that Louis shares like after he spoke to the lawyer, and Armand's like, that was a really emotionally vulnerable memory that Louis shared with you, and you're just gonna make jokes about it. And it's just like, but that's real. Like, he's just like, we're trying to tell you this story, and at every single turn, you make a joke, you trivialize it, you jump all over it, you cut down any attempts at what's it called, like connection, or like having this what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
It's like empathy.
Okay.
Yeah, at empathizing with Louis, or trying to understand Louis on an emotional level, in favor of like discrediting
But
him.
he was real interested in finding out if they fucked.
Oh yeah. And they didn't, and I never cheered louder. My longest yeah boy ever. Yeah. Yeah. And the only we see like him start to empathize with Louis a little bit in season 2, but then like, it doesn't last very long until I would say after episode 5, when he realizes that they're both victims of the same event, and then he's like, we're on a team against Armand.
And I'm like, oh, would have been nice if you had been on Louis' team from the beginning.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just like one of the ways in which I'm like, the way that Daniel treats him is because he is a Black gay man. And then we also see just how Louis has to move, early on, when we first meet him in season 1. Like, he's having to move as a Black gay man. And there's a lot of things he's not able to like access without having his husband co-sign for him.
Yeah.
Despite being extremely business savvy.
Or like when he's then having the art, like the in episode 3, when he's meeting with Fenwick and Tom Anderson, and Lestat just has to sit in the room.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
They take him seriously in the first place.
That's crazy.
And it's just like, Lestat's not even adding anything to the conversation. He has to be there to legitimize Louis, which is insane. And I think like it's always complicated. Like, it's complicated with vampires because like while Lestat and Louis physically are close to the same age, they are not close to the same age.
Yes.
Like actually.
Yes.
And that whole thing of like older white men preying on younger Black gay men, I think also works there, because like while, like I said, they both technically look in their 30s. Lestat has more life experience just by nature of having been on the earth a lot longer, and being able, the wealth he has mostly accrued, well, I mean, he got a really big check at one point, but he's able to maximize that because he's lived so long, and kind of like raise his
the fact that
his net worth.
The fact that once again he places themselves in, along with like this husband and wife role, also as a teacher student role. I feel like already kind of leans into what we're talking about here.
Yeah, where he's like, let me learn you a thing, and like, I'm a mentor, you're my mentee, like, type of thing.
Yeah.
What is it? The haunting phrase that Louis uses: if I was a baby bird in Lestat's nest.
Outline was wild.
I was just like, you were a what? Where? Okay. Oh my god, but I also love the line when he's like, it's one of my favorite line deliveries in season 1, of like him talking about he's like, there was a sort of worship on my part, the ground beneath me always felt liquid, of just like, no matter what, I always felt like I wasn't on solid ground. I was always on the back foot when it came to Lestat, no matter what, because he was this powerful person, this like very, I would also say like the fact that Lestat is so, he knows who he is, and he's very assured in himself. Yeah. And I think
there's this freedom to him.
Yeah, and I think Louis admires that. And it makes him like wished that he could emulate that and frustrated when he can't.
And a lot of the reason why is because he's a black gay man.
And I'm like, that's why. But it's just like this once again an unachievable goal that he would like to have. And I think once things start changing socially a little bit, like we see him a little bit more confident, him being like a real estate mogul in San Francisco, and then him in his situation in Dubai, where he has a lot more power. I think more the power he wants to have. He is a capitalist, and that is his sin.
But back up for him though. He's allowed to have one sin.
Yeah, his one sin is that he is a capitalist. And he enjoys it.
Yeah.
But yeah, him being able to be this multi-millionaire living in this penthouse in this very ethically, I would say, morally dubious city. A city that should not exist. Controversial opinion, but please stop visiting Dubai. Stop buying shit from Dubai.
Oh my god, stop.
It's not good, and the fact that the interview takes place in Dubai, I think, is really important. Because it is a city of human exploitation, specifically of people of African descent and also South Asian descent. So it's really crazy that Louis and Armand are there. But I think it's also important that they are the ones who are there in this particular city that exploits people who look like them, and they are finding ways to profit off of it.
Yeah.
Or find profit while living there. But
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, no, because it's still all circles in with like race and all of it. So yeah, I think it's still a good thing to mention. And you had said something before that I was going to say something to, but now
I don't remember a single thing I say after I say
it. Damn, what was I going to say?
Yeah, but I think like, yeah, that kind of feeding into that same thing that we're talking about of like the older white queer man preying on a younger black queer man, or fostering this unbalanced relationship, because it does kind of feed their ego. Because I do think it made Lestat feel better to be able to be like, I'm gonna teach you things.
Yeah.
I mean, that feel smart for once.
That is a big part in those like dynamics.
It's almost like midlife crisis.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It feeds into that because like it's about having someone who will like stroke their ego, and usually it's these like white men who have like a little bit of money, and they may not be attractive to other, white. They're no longer like the standard for like in their space, so they venture out and start preying on more vulnerable young black men.
Yeah, and then we see it doesn't really work with Daniel and Louis, because Louis is like, I am the older. I am the older, more successful man.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when I met you in San Francisco, I was the older, more successful man.
He's like, don't forget, boy.
Yeah. And then Armand is like, I am the even older. I don't know that I'm successful, but my wife is. My wife is, and she put a credit card that I can use.
Yeah, I have a credit card with my name on it.
Yeah.
That's linked.
It's linked to her account. I don't know how, because I don't even have a last name.
You can take Dulac.
Oh my god, I think he would love to be Armand Dupont Dulac.
Aww. Maybe if you weren't too busy being evil.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's basically what I kind of wanted to get into, because I just feel like it's important to talk about all the different aspects of Louis. like, we can talk about family, but I still think it's very... Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
Perfect.
The other aspect of why I think it's important to, like, acknowledge that Louis is a Black gay man at the end of the day, is because also it kind of... The one person who he's, like, let down is Claudia. Yes. And I feel like him being a Black gay man, whatever, of a certain class in New Orleans kind of, like, really highlights what his relationship and the dynamic and the power that he does have in regards to Claudia.
Yes. I feel like with the family, when we talked a little bit about it, where it's like there is this hierarchy, I think how they sit in that hierarchy also speaks to where they rank socially.
Yeah.
So you have Lestat as, like, this white man, and then you have Louis as a Black queer man, but he's also bourgeois. We see he has servants in his house in episode 1. He's not poor. And he grew up, and him having the job that he has is him trying to maintain a certain level of wealth, not achieve a new one, but he grew up wealthy. And then we have Claudia, who is a Black queer of, like, grew up poor woman who's also stuck in the body of a teenager, and I think it also all speaks to their mobility. Lestat can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Lestat can be anywhere, start up anywhere, and has a lot more mobility, socially and physically. Louis has less.
Yeah.
There's a lot more places where he is not as safe. Claudia, as we saw in season 1, episode 5, it took her 7 years and she didn't make it out of the South.
Yeah.
When she was traveling on her own. It is hard for her to navigate the world. And when she comes back home, her goal is so that she can take Louis and then leave again to have more mobility. Because she doesn't have any. And then we see her when she ends up with Madeline, because Madeline is a white woman. Madeline has more mobility and they're able to travel more together. But yeah, like...
Well, we should definitely wait to get even more
into that. We'll get into more when we get to Claudia. But like, just talking about, like, how Louis has to have an axis, at least multiple axes of privilege over Claudia for this hierarchy to mean anything.
Yes.
And one of those does have to do with the fact that he is a man. And there's a book that is it came out, like, in the 90s, so it's more about, like, the book Interview with the Vampire and the movie Interview with the Vampire, but this aspect is still the same, where it's like Claudia is a double victim of patriarchy. She's in a house with no mother. She's in a house with 2 fathers, in fact. So it's like we have to observe that Louis is a wife, but also he is a patriarchal figure as well for Claudia, and that he determines a lot of her life and what a lot of her life looks like. And that causes a lot of friction between them that we see them outright, bring up in the show multiple times. And we see Louis express some frustration not frustration, but, like, resentment when Claudia is trying to move out of the house and have her own life. And they have that argument in season 2 where he's like, where she's trying to be like, you picked Armand over me, and he's like, well, you picked the Coffin.
Yeah.
So you got to go be happy with what you chose, which was the Coffin. You chose to leave home to move out and go with your little friends, and meanwhile I'm home and you didn't want to be here, so go hang out with those friends you chose.
Which is why he's still a mother.
That's a mom argument.
He's still the mom, but it's that, like, where, like you said, like, his, like, access and mobility and all those things is still what's factored in is that he is a man.
Yeah, he can move more than a Black woman could.
Yeah.
But he still is in this role with Claudia as a mother.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
If you look at, like, social hierarchy.
Yes. Trying to get the words.
Yes. But yeah.
Yeah.
Man, sorry, I love that scene. It's so well acted, and I love that whole episode where you can feel, like, this, like, Claudia for the trying to be happy. You can feel them both trying to be happy for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can see Claudia trying to be happy that like Louis living this life, even though I at this point with the whole play thing, she's not too thrilled about Armand as a person, but she's like whatever. And then you can feel Louis showing up to all the shows, even though he thinks the theater sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he's
they
resentful
really
that she's leaving home. I know. The love is difficult. The love is hard. The love has a lot of baggage.
They kill me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna die.
It's so good.
I love that so much.
I love that. The whole... Anyway. But yeah, you can really feel that. And yes. I the only... And we know that, like, Louis is forever haunted by the things he did not do for Claudia. Mm-hmm. Even though he tried to do a lot for her. Yeah. But there's always... The cruel reality of being a parent as someone who is not a parent... And I will never be. And will never be a parent. Is that, but who? So
honestly, part of this is part of the reason. Yeah, I think
like I've never been a parent, but I do have one. So I was like the cruel, the tragedy of being being a parent is that you will always fail your child in some way.
Yeah,
you are not a perfect person, therefore you can't do everything for them. And one of the ways that Louis has failed Claudia is, a lot of times it's unconscious, but it's like not thinking of her when making decisions, and the position that ends up putting her in because she was not considered. And part of it, I would say, especially in Paris, was they were trying to make separate lives. Yeah. So some of the choices he makes are in that sort of frame of mind of being like, well, since we are trying to separate ourselves from each other, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But then it has repercussions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Interesting things to consider and think about.
Man, Louis is such a good character. Like I've said this before, I didn't give a shit about Louis in the book or in the movie or anything. They took all of those bones, because I wouldn't say they changed a whole lot. They just, like, added new context and made it matter. Mm-hmm. And when they had this, like, angst and stuff, really made it, like, poignant and very potent. And I'm like, this is such a great vampire character. This is such a great character in general. But, like, for the genre, I think absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, I really love Louis. Like, I love him so much. Probably one of my favorite characters ever now at this point.
You can't see it. Once again, this is audio. The plushie of Louis is on the table.
Well, it's because otherwise I was afraid that I would start
smacking the desk
because I want to do things with my hands. So I'm like, let me just keep him nearby. So if I need to...
We have 3 likenesses of Louis right here. We have the plushie and we have the 2 photo cards. I'm being stared at by 2 Louis, and then there's one that Amari is holding.
And then there's one behind us. Hey, with Armand. He's not looking at us though, because he's too busy being gaslighted and watched over by Armand. He's like looking over his shoulder like, now what is my man's doing? Yeah. But my baby. Oh my god. Yeah, Louis is such a special character, and I get really frustrated by how people talk about him, because I do not feel like people, rather they don't understand the many different layers that he has and his complexity, or I feel like people are resistant to even try to understand, or once again they come at it from an angle that's like centered in whiteness. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to talk about when we were talking about like ownership and like how people there's the way that people center that in Louis' own personal journeys is what I have a very I have a problem with. Like, obviously, like, Lestat is very influential.
Yeah, like, this isn't to say Lestat was not important.
Yeah, no, definitely not saying that. But, like, when people talk about him, like I talked about this already today. I didn't talk about it with you, but I talked about it in group chat. Group chat. I was complaining. I got so upset. Like we kind of touched on it a little bit. Seeing how people talked about how Louis reading the book or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And that felt like they were more centering the ship and Lestat than centering what Louis was actually going through.
Yeah.
Once again, talking about like the finale episode.
Yes, with a beautiful monologue.
Yes, with that beautiful monologue. It's more like they were centering, oh, he loves Lestat. I'm like,
this isn't like a red string of
this
fate
is not
thing.
This is not like a little romantic like scene. Like this is a very like Louis just lost Claudia.
He watched Lestat go on stage, make a mockery of their relationship, paint him as the aggressor in their relationship, while also painting him as a frigid wife.
Yes.
And then,
like, first of all, how's he? We'll get into that in the trial scene.
Well, like, to bring it up briefly, like though, like there is this when we're like talking about this sort of thing, like the hypocritical nature of these critiques, which I think were also mirrored in the fandom as well, where they say two things that are contradictory back to back, but assert them both is true.
Yes.
And you have this thing where like Lestat starts off as being like, I was being hunted,
which is very racialized.
Very racialized. But he made Louis seem like this hypersexual, aggressive. Which, when you
consider like the lynchings that were happening during that time and why they were happening, it's extremely racialized, and I'm going to talk about in depth. Because I had written a whole article, but I didn't finish writing it. So we're just gonna talk about it instead.
But then also like them being like Louis was not tending to my sexual needs, and therefore I had to seek out you know, it elsewhere. Very, very racialized, very, very much so. And he'd just seen Lestat do all that, and then. Claudia is killed because of all of that. Yeah. He's not talking about him romantically in that moment.
He's not talking about anyone romantically. Like, both of his lovers are just fucked him over. There's no romance to be discussed right now.
Yeah.
He's going through it. Like, he just lost Claudia. He just lost his daughter.
Yeah.
And is fucking buried in a fucking coffin.
Yeah, he's being starved to death.
You think he's thinking about the romance of it all? No. And I feel like so many people want to like, and that's what I mean by centering Lestat. You can talk about how Lestat has like influenced his life or whatever, because he obviously is a very significant piece of his life. Like, I know that, but like, it doesn't feel like people want to actually center Louis
in Louis' own story.
And I have a big fucking problem with that. Yeah. And it ends up dictating a lot of how people interact with Louis. Even down to why we get back to like the whole trad wife thing and stuff like that. But we already talked about that, but
it's this idea that like, also I've seen people say this before of like describing it as like I think we already said this also in the previous episode of like the Lestat romance, like love story, like the whole show was the Lestat love story. I'm like, no, the seasons 1 and 2,
Louis' story,
the interview with the vampire, like that story, it's about Louis' life.
Yes,
and if it's about any like overarching love, it's about his love for Claudia.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the
if there's like a loving relationship at the center of this story, it's Claudia. It's about Louis and Claudia. And then those ties to like, I also feel like he feels that the ways that he's like, I failed Claudia, and also I think maybe he feels like he also failed Paul, because they're both in his little remembrance garden of like these two people he couldn't say that he loved so much. But I wouldn't say that it's that like Lestat is at the center of it. But yeah, for sure. It's them being like, any self-actualization Louis experiences is because of Lestat. Any big feelings he feels have to do with Lestat, even when they are explicitly stated not to be about Lestat at all. it's very frustrating. Very, very frustrating, because then we can't have any conversations about Louis just on his own. It always has to be in relation to Lestat. And then when we're trying to talk about all these facets of Louis, which are he has many, and they can sometimes be I was like, because they are complex, they may not so nicely, like, sometimes, I don't say they can be contradictory, but like they add a lot of nuance to each other, and people choosing to ignore some to focus on others, but by doing that, they, I guess
a lot of them are in conversation.
Yeah, they're all in conversation.
Like everything we talked about today, like,
yeah,
all the different like layers, they're all in like conversation with each other. You can talk about Femme Louis while also talking about the fact that he likes Saddam.
And just to say, like once again, femininity is not like the opposite of like it. You can be feminine and dominant, and it's really, really frustrating. All the people I've seen, like, both jokingly and in sincerity, say that Louis was self-harming by
that was fucking
doming.
crazy. That pissed me off. Once again, I'm like, do you really like Louis? Like, he's out here talking about, like, how he got to really explore his sexuality to the full, and you're like, he's self-harming. And I'm like,
yeah.
We're, once again, denying his agency. Like, okay.
Yeah, and, like, one of the, like, here's the thing. Armand has such a fluid sense of self that, and he will do whatever, he will assume the role that he feels he needs to assume in order to keep another person with him. If he felt that Louis actually wanted to be submissive, he would have been dominant. Armand does not have a strong enough sense of self to be able to say, like, assertively, I am only submissive, or I am only dom. Like, he'll do whatever. He's up for anything. So, like, and also I feel like it is Orientalist to be like, he craves submission.
Yeah.
How about, we'll get more into that.
Because, we have a lot to say on that as well.
Or I've seen people try and say that, like, Armand is being anti-black by making Louis dom.
Oh my god, that's so crazy. That's so crazy.
I blocked someone for that.
That's so
because they were, like, being so serious about it. They were like, Armand is utilizing anti-blackness by forcing Louis to be the dominant person in the relationship and having him take on a hyper-masculine, sexually aggressive role. Because, like, that's how he sees Louis. No, he doesn't!
Are you crazy? Are you crazy? We already see how Armand has utilized anti-blackness.
Yeah.
You don't need to make up shit.
No.
But we'll get more into Armand, because a lot of y'all do that. Make up shit when he already has crimes. And we will spell them out.
He has so many
We will spell them out for you. We've already did it a little bit today, but we will spell them out for you. But you don't need to make up crimes.
Yeah.
Like, let's just, I think at the end of the day, I'm like, let's just be very real about what is in the show when it comes to all of these characters.
Yeah, because I think the show's trying to have very interesting conversations about these topics. And then, like, I don't know, I guess seeing all these things get thrown aside.
It feels like people focus too much on shipping.
Yeah, there was a joke I'd seen about Severance that I'm also going to apply to this, where this person's like, I think some of you are watching Severance the way you're watching, like, All the Boys I've Loved Before. And it's just like, I think some of you are watching Interview with the Vampire, this, like, you're watching Twilight.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You are
100%.
not engaging with what's there. You're throwing it away in favor of, like, which ship you like the most. Which is not it's not to say that you can't have, like, nuanced conversations through shipping, but people are ignoring nuanced conversations for trying to prop up their favorite abuser.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how about we look at the main character and what this informs about him when we're talking about Louis himself, why does it always have to be through the lens of a relationship, which one of these relationships, or about, like, not about how he feels or, like, how this playing out, what that says about Louis, as opposed to what it says about the other person. Have you considered what Louis desires in this relationship? What Louis trying to get out of it? Why Louis did this particular thing? And can you do that and take off your shipping goggles when doing so? Because I've seen some people try and assert things about Louis' actions that make zero fucking sense. Like the bench scene. People being like, Louis trying to protect Claudia. No, he isn't. Because if Louis trying to protect Claudia, he would have taken Armand's out when he said, you should think to leave. And Louis said, no, I'm staying here with you. Like, this was Louis making a very clear choice. He was choosing Armand. He was choosing his relationship. He was actually committing to Armand, something he had been very
unsure about rushing into.
But it was after this, like, this very emotional display. And when I also think he was looking at that photograph that he had taken of him and what the guy, the appraiser had said of, like, there's something fragile about this man and you found the soul that he's hiding, and then he has this confession from Armand, and so he's, like, looking at it for real and being like, this guy is different. I can fix him. No, but like
Louis, you can't.
No, you can't.
You can't fix any of these men.
No, you can't. But yeah, like this very I want to do this. I want to be with him. I want to try and pursue this, and I want to try something different. And I feel like this person is giving me a framework with which I can choose who I am and also have him choose who he is. And we can start over. I think he's trying to give Armand a gift in this situation where it's like what they both want is something different. And Louis is like, oh, I can do this and I can also shoulder some of your burden and I can, give you, like, do all this for you. Instead of it being like, also, I think, like, people don't realize the picture of Louis they're painting as, like, Louis is pretending to be attracted to Armand in order to save Claudia. I think the same thing when people are, like, saying that Louis looked disgusted when Armand was talking about his backstory. You have a very low opinion of Louis, I think, if you're citing that. Louis' biggest thing, like, Louis is too empathetic. And if you think that Louis is the type of person who would listen to a victim of human trafficking telling his story and be disgusted by that, I really don't think you're a fan of Louis. I think you think he's a much worse person than he is, because what kind of person do you think Louis is to be like, I have the ick now that I know that you were human trafficked as a child? Yeah. That's an insane person that you have described. That I think you have a very, like, I could say you have a low opinion of Louis if you think that that's what happened. A very low opinion of Louis.
I almost have forgotten that people were saying that shit.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't even make sense.
It's very inconsistent with his character.
Yeah.
Yeah. That blows my mind, because I saw someone say it again recently.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
I feel like we've been having a lot of, like,
resurgence of
certain conversations, and I'm
bullshit.
like, no!
Yeah.
Please shut the fuck up. I basically, as much as I love attention on Louis, I don't want to hear people talk about Louis anymore. I want Louis to get the attention he deserves, but I need y'all to take a quiz before you start talking to him.
Because, like, what a shitty person, like, to be like, oh, I'm hearing this person tell me about how he was, like, sold into sexual slavery and groomed and all of this, and I think that, and now I'm not as attracted to him anymore. What the fuck?
Weird. When really it's just Louis trying to be like, there's that little part of Louis being like,
trying to maintain skepticism, but also losing.
Yeah.
Because he's like, because how could you hear that story and not be like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Like, it's so heartbreaking, and Louis went in there trying to be like keeping a mentality, and he was like, well, this isn't gonna stay. Yeah. Ugh, it's so it sucks. It sucks to hear people say that. It's so
like, a lot of the times I'm just like, I don't think y'all really like Louis, actually.
Yeah, I think Louis, that's why Louis was like, I need to take care of this guy. He's like, when's the last time someone looked out for him? And it's like how he leaves that conversation. Because, like, that happens the exact same night of the bench scene. So, like, that's fresh in his mind.
Yeah.
Where he's like, damn, this guy's been through a lot. And then Claudia comes in and he's like, hey, you know the guy that you're having this, like, intense moment of sympathy for? He just threatened me. And then Louis like, doesn't sound like him.
That sounds fake.
Yeah, when he's like, at this point, like, really thinking on Armand's fragility and Armand's vulnerability. And then he doesn't want to have that reminder of Armand's
Which once again
violence.
goes into where the times that Louis has, like, failed Claudia. And so by saying that, like, oh, he only did this to protect Claudia, but we clearly see that, like, that was not the case.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, just, like, once again, there's... people flatten Louis. Mm-hmm. They flatten Louis to serve their own purposes, basically.
Yeah.
When Louis is such a rich character, and I just wish we could, like, engage with him properly.
Mm-hmm. I also think to jump a little bit, I also think, like, one of the reasons why he feels like this time with Armand is going to be different is because going back with that metaphor of, like, being able to read each other's minds also having to do with, like, having experience with racism is, like, he's like, well, it's different once again because Armand's not white. It's different because me and Armand can read each other's minds. So it's not the same as it was with Lestat.
Yes.
We have this thing that
I mean, Claudia points it out right away.
Yeah, when she's just like, yeah, they're being run. Like, that's one of the reasons why she was so excited to join. Because she's like, the Coffin's being led by a vampire with skin darker than yours. And, like, he has these experiences with, like, you know, racism, disenfranchisement, and like that. And I think hearing his experience, specifically with a very intimate relationship with slavery that he's experienced, and Louis just like, wow. Like, this guy understands what it means to be, like, to have that disempowerment and, like, have, you know, this marginalization. And to feel powerless in a way that Lestat never did. And, like, really, like, leans into that. And he's like, I think we can understand each other a lot more. And we can see each other. And I think, like, having that metaphor of, like, they can share the mind gift with each other. Makes him think that their relationship is on more equal footing. Or they can make a relationship that's on more equal footing. And then that turns out to not be the case. But yeah. Anyway, I kind of feel like that's all I have.
I feel like I'm forgetting things, but whatever. We can always talk about Louis another time.
Yeah, if anyone wants to just come in and ask us about Louis, we will talk about Louis for 1,000 years.
Yeah. But also, like, so, like, a lot of what we talked about, also, there are, like, different, like, references that I was really thinking on when we were discussing it. And so I will also, like, drop what, like, because there are different, like, there's a book. I already mentioned a book already. There's a couple of articles.
Yeah.
And so just, like, if you want to do some reading, because reading's always a good thing, we will put those in the description. Because I feel like there's a lot of context to take from when we were talking about Louis. So yeah, Louis, my love. As I'm holding,
I know, that's why I was laughing because this whole, like, last leg of the conversation, you were just, like, playing with his hair.
Yeah, I got kind of quiet because I was just, like, rubbing his hair. I was like,
Yeah.
Good talk. It's also like 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Which is why I'm like, I might have more to say about Louis later on. But when that happens, I'll just you know, we'll jump on another thing. However, next time we will be talking about Claudia.
Yeah.
Who I love dearly as well. And then we're going to talk about Armand. And then we're going to talk about that trial.
Yeah, because I think the trial really, like, converges on this, like, specifically, like, race and gender as it pertains to Louis, Armand, and Claudia.
Yes.
All of it comes to a head, I feel like, in the trial.
Yeah.
And the way that plays out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And obviously with, like, the others that we mentioned too, like Lestat and also Madeline. I feel like it's also important. Santiago.
We're not going to be leaving them out. While our focus is people of color, we
have to talk about their roles in it too. Like, and Madeline not as a perpetrator, unlike Lestat and Santiago, but like the way that the kid gloves are put on with her as opposed to the others.
Yes. Trust. I had done so much research and wrote a little bit of it, but then I never finished it but it's fine. We're gonna talk about that episode and the trial specifically.
Yeah.
Very soon. And so everything I had looked up, we will talk about then.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else?
I think that's all I have for now.
Okay.
So that's been us. This has been the second episode of Straight from the Coffin.
Straight from the Coffin.
We're not gonna do a jingle!
Yes, we are.
No, we aren't.
That's Straight from the Coffin.
Oh, God.
Amari,
oh, God.
And Jude.
Oh, God.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on all our
socials.
Subscribe and like and comment. I want to like discuss this more because I'm always very sleepy when I have these discussions, unfortunately. But like, if you comment, we'll respond so that we can dig even deeper into, or if you have any questions, you want more of our input on something, maybe, because we're like, we're just so like
we're like so
and
smart.
we can like discuss it more. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're like. But yeah, so do all the things.
All the links are in the description. Once again, at some point we're gonna find like a thing for a podcast also, specifically.
Like, follow us on Twitch and if you ever want to just like chat with us about the things we talked about, you can come to our Twitch and talk about.
Yes,
we're talk to us in real time. I would love that.
Yeah, we're streaming a lot on Fridays and Sundays.
Mainly Sundays, some Fridays.
Yeah, some Fridays when we can swing it.
Just, you can...
We do stuff on Friday. We're fucking nerds. We have D&D on Fridays.
Yeah.
So when we have time before that, we will stream.
Yeah.
So if you want to come in, mostly on Sundays though.
And chat with us
about Interview with the Vampire. Or chat with us about whatever. We will chat.
Yeah.
Alright. That's all I have.
Same. Bye.
Bye.